It is 1:17 in the morning, and a man is reading a text message that is 4 years old. He is not looking for new information. He could recite every word with his eyes closed. He keeps coming back to it, the way your tongue keeps finding a broken tooth. Because somewhere inside those two short sentences is the exact moment when the person who knew him best became a stranger. His brother, the one who knew where every key was hidden. That is the strange arithmetic of betrayal. A stranger can rob you, but only family can hand over the map. And the worst part is not even what they did. The worst part is the other life. The one you would be living right now if they had never done it. That life follows you around. It shows up at 1:17 in the morning and sits on the edge of the bed. 3,000 years ago, there was a 17-year-old boy standing at the edge of a dry well, about to lose his coat, his home, his name, and every witness who could tell the truth. His own brothers were rolling up their sleeves. By this time tomorrow, his father would be weeping over a lie, and the boy would be property, chained in a caravan, headed the wrong direction. Tonight we are going to walk through 10 moments when that boy's life appeared to fall permanently into somebody else's hands. At every single turning point, we will ask one question: who was actually holding the pen? And I promise you, at least 2 of the answers will run against things you have heard from pulpits your whole life. Here is the first thing you need to see. It starts with a coat. It is Thanksgiving, 4:30 in the afternoon, and a man is watching his father raise a glass for the 3rd time this year. The toast is for his youngest brother. The promotion, the new house, the whole shining season the kid is having, and the man watching from the far end of the table is 44 years old. And he is the one who drove their father to every cardiology appointment last spring. The one who slept in a recliner beside a hospital bed for 6 nights. The one who handles the property taxes and the gutters and the insurance forms nobody else will touch. There has never been a toast for the gutters. There is never going to be a toast for the gutters. Nobody at that table is a villain. The father loves all his sons and would swear to it on the family Bible. The youngest brother did earn the promotion. But watch the man at the far end of the table lift his glass with everyone else, and smile with everyone else, and look down at his plate 1 second too early. Something is being planted under that tablecloth. Nobody will see it for years. Everyone will see it eventually. Now come with me to a tent in Canaan, 3,000 years back, because the oldest family story in the book of Genesis runs on the exact same fuel. We like to start the story of Joseph with Joseph, but the Bible does not. The Bible starts it 2 generations earlier, with a family that kept handing down the same wound the way other families hand down a nose or a temper. Isaac had 2 sons and loved Esau more, and everybody knew it. Rebekah loved Jacob more, and everybody knew that too. The favoritism split the house, and Jacob had to run for his life from his own brother. And you would think a man who bled from favoritism his whole childhood would burn the practice out of his bloodline forever. He did the opposite. Jacob grew up and married 2 sisters, Leah and Rachel, and loved one of them more. And everybody knew it. Leah spent her whole marriage naming babies like flares fired into the night sky. Each name a message to a husband who never quite turned around. Then Rachel, the loved one, the waited for one, died young on the side of a road giving birth. And Jacob folded all that oceanic grief into her 2 boys, especially the first one, especially Joseph. So understand what that coat actually was. because we have flattened it into a children's flannel board, and it deserves better. When Jacob had that garment made for his 11th son, he was not buying school clothes. 10 other sons watched their father commission something ornate, something expensive, something a working shepherd could never wear into a field, and hand it to the teenager who already got the lightest chores and the longest leash. Jacob took 40 years of unspoken favoritism and had it sewn into fabric. He put his affection into cloth. And then he made Joseph wear the announcement into the pasture every single morning. The brothers could read it from half a mile away. That was the point of it. A coat like that is legible at a distance. And the text gives you the temperature of the house in one line. They hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Sit with how specific that is. Not that they argued, not that they fought at dinner. The ordinary kindness between brothers, the pass, the bread, the good morning, the how did you sleep, all of it had dried up completely. When simple courtesy dies in a family, something with teeth is being born to replace it. Now here is a detail your Sunday school almost certainly skipped, and it should raise the hair on your arms. That Hebrew phrase for Joseph's coat, Ketanit Pasim, appears exactly one more time in the entire Old Testament. One more time. In all those thousands of pages. It is in 2 Samuel, chapter 13, and it is describing the robe worn by Tamar, the daughter of King David. On the day her own half-brother destroyed her life and her own family covered it up. 2 people in the whole Bible wear this garment. Both of them are torn apart by the people inside their own house. As if the coat itself is trying to warn you. As if Scripture sewed a thread between the 2 of them so that nobody could ever pretend the most dangerous room in the world is a dark alley. The most dangerous room has always been the one where everybody knows your name. Into that house, God sends 2 dreams. Joseph is 17 when they come. In the first one, the brothers are all binding sheaves of grain out in a field, and Joseph's sheaf stands upright, and the other sheaves gather around and bow down to it. In the second one, the volume goes up. The sun, the moon, and 11 stars come bowing down to him. The whole cosmology of the family bending at the waist. And what does a 17-year-old do with dreams like that? Exactly what you would expect a 17-year-old to do. He tells them, both of them, at what may be the 2 worst family meetings in recorded history. Listen to this dream I had, he says, to 10 grown men who cannot manage a kind good morning in his direction, even his father, the man who made the coat, hears the second dream and rebukes him for it. Shall your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you? Now be careful here, because there are 2 ditches on either side of this road, and most tellings of this story drive straight into one of them. The first ditch says Joseph was an insufferable brat who had it coming. Read the text. The dreams were real. They came from God, and every last detail of them would come true in about 22 years. In a throne room in Egypt, witnessed and recorded, Joseph was not inventing grandeur. He was handed it, young, in a house already soaked in gasoline. The second ditch says Joseph was a flawless little saint, and the brothers were simply monsters. But the text will not give you that either. It mentions, quietly, that Joseph brought his father a bad report about some of his brothers. It shows him announcing dream number 2 after dream number 1 had already made the room hate him. There is real 17 in this 17-year-old. He has a calling the size of a nation and the judgment of a high school junior. And those 2 things are living in the same body. wearing the same loud coat. And that combination is worth naming, because some of you have lived it. God can hand you something true before you are grown enough to carry it well. The gift is real, and the immaturity is real, and they ride in the same wagon for years. Joseph would one day learn to steward a dream so wisely that a foreign empire would trust him with its food supply. At 17, he could not even steward the telling of it at his own dinner table. But now, hear the sentence, this whole chapter has been walking toward, and hear it exactly. Nothing about that boy's clumsiness earned him a pit. His lack of wisdom explains why the house got hotter. It does not justify what the 10 of them were about to do with the heat. Immature is not a crime. 17 is not a crime. Being loved more than your brothers, through no vote of your own, is not a crime. Whatever the young man's flaws were, they belonged in an argument. Maybe in a hard conversation with his father. What the brothers did with them belongs in a courtroom. Keep that line bright. Because betrayal always shops for a justification afterward, and it usually tries to buy one from the victim's imperfections. Maybe somebody did that math on you once. Maybe they took your worst moment and used it as the receipt for what they did to you. That receipt was forged. It always is. There is one more thing the dreams did. And this may be the strangest mercy in the whole chapter. The dreams made everything worse. We tell young believers that when God speaks, doors open. Joseph's experience was the opposite. God spoke, and every door in his life slammed. The dreams did not win him respect. They armed his enemies. The text says it 3 times in a span of 5 verses. They hated him for the dream. They hated him even more. They were jealous of him. Heaven handed Joseph a promise, and the immediate. The measurable result was that his own family finalized its verdict against him. And then God went silent. Mark this, because it becomes the spine of everything ahead of us. After those 2 dreams, God does not say another word to Joseph for 13 years. No explanation, no timeline, no angel in the night saying, "Hold on, kid." The caravan is part of the plan. Abraham got visions. Jacob got a ladder full of angels and a wrestling match by a river. Joseph, whose road would be darker than either of theirs. You got 2 dreams at 17, and then a silence you could pour a whole youth into. Some of you know that exact arrangement. A promise that felt like God, followed by years that felt like nobody. Hold that thought. This entire journey is about what happens inside that silence. So here is the sentence to put in your pocket from this first turning point. Being resented for what you did not choose is not proof that you were wrong to be chosen. Say it slowly. Whoever needs it. The favor you did not ask for. The gift that made the room turn cold. The calling that cost you the family peace before it ever paid you a thing. None of that resentment is evidence against the promise. Sometimes the first price of a real calling is being hated for it before you are old enough to carry it. Now, I can already hear somebody talking back to the screen, and it is a fair objection. So let me say it for you. Fine. Preacher. A dream and a fancy coat. That is favor. That is a good problem. My story does not start with favor. Mine starts with the people who were supposed to protect me, deciding I was disposable. Then come with me to a field outside a town called Dothan, because 10 men are watching a spot of color come over the hill, and before the boy wearing it gets close enough to say, "Good morning," they have already voted. It is a Tuesday morning in a courthouse parking lot. and a woman is sitting in her car with a folder on the passenger seat that she cannot make herself open again. She has already seen what is inside. Bank statements, withdrawal slips, and a signature. Her younger brother's signature. 60, sometimes, on the account that was supposed to pay for their mother's memory care. She checked that signature 3 separate times at her kitchen table, holding the paper up to the light like a bank teller, praying it was forged. It is not forged. She has known that handwriting since he was learning cursive at that same kitchen table. Here is what is actually strangling her. And it is not the money. It is a simple fact of physics she never had to think about before. A stranger could not have done this. A stranger does not have power of attorney. A stranger was never handed the passwords. The trust. The benefit of every doubt. The only people who can truly betray you are the people you first handed a key. Strangers have to break in. Family gets buzzed through the front door. If you have ever been buzzed through somebody's front door and robbed them, or if you are the one who handed over the key and watched what they did with it. This next scene is 3,000 years old, and it will feel like it happened to you last spring. Genesis. Chapter 37. Jacob sends Joseph out to check on his brothers, who are grazing the flocks a long way from home. Pause on that errand, because the innocence of it will break your heart in about 4 verses. A father sending one son to find his other sons. The most ordinary domestic errand in the world. Go see if your brothers are okay. Joseph cannot find them at first. A stranger discovers him wandering afield and points him toward Dothan. He is 17. He is alone. He is far from home. And he is wearing the coat. And the brothers see him coming from a long way off. Of course they do. That was always the coat's one great talent. It is legible at a distance. And watch what distance does in this story. Because it is doing something terrible. Up close. Joseph is a face. He is the kid who was born when their father was old. The toddler, some of them probably carried on their shoulders. Their own mother's rival's son, but still, undeniably, a boy they have watched grow up. From half a mile away he is none of that. From half a mile away he is a stripe of color on a hillside. He is an idea. Walking. Here comes that dreamer. They say to each other, look at the words. Not here comes Joseph. Not here comes our brother. The distance has already done its work. They have converted a person into a category. And it is a well-documented fact of human darkness that people can do things to a category that they could never do to a face. Come now, they say, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. And we will say, a fierce animal has devoured him. And then this, the actual quote, and we shall see what will become of his dreams. There it is. Out loud. The dreams are the target. This was never really about a coat or a bad report or a spoiled little brother. Heaven had said something about this boy's future, and they intended to overrule it. That is the true anatomy of what happened at Dothan, and you should look at it in full light. Betrayal, at its blackest root, is one person deciding they get to edit somebody else's future. Your future, the one God was writing. They read a page of it and reached for the pen. Reuben, the oldest, talks them down off of murder. Do not shed blood, he says. Throw him into this pit out here in the wilderness. The text tells us his private plan was to circle back and rescue the boy later, which is its own quiet tragedy. The brother who objected in his heart and managed only a half measure out loud. Some of you have been on the receiving end of a Reuben, the person who knew it was wrong, who whispered to you afterward that they never agreed with it. who wanted credit for the objection they never made in the room where it counted. So Joseph walks into the camp, 17 years old, probably relieved to have finally found them, probably rehearsing the little report he will carry home to their father. And it came to pass, the text says, when Joseph had come to his brothers, that they stripped Joseph of his coat, the coat of many colors that was on him. They took the coat first, before the pit, before the sale, before any of it. 10 grown men peeled that garment off a struggling teenager. And you do not need a single verse of commentary to understand why. The coat was the Father's voice. The coat was the favor made visible. They could not reach the love itself, so they tore off its uniform. Underline this moment, because it is going to happen to Joseph again, and then again, and you need to see the pattern the first time it fires. People keep laying hands on what Joseph wears. Watch how many chapters of this story turn on somebody grabbing his clothing and using it to tell a story about him. They keep changing what he wears, because they believe, at some animal level, that if they can change what he wears, they can change what he is. Then they took him and threw him into a pit, and the pit was empty. There was no water in it. A cistern, most likely, a bottle-shaped hole cut into rock to catch the winter rains, narrow at the mouth, wide and dark at the bottom, walls carved smooth on purpose so that nothing could climb out. Farmers dug them all over that country. In a dry season, it is just a stone throat in the ground, deep enough that the sky becomes a small bright coin far above you, and cold, because the sun has never once touched the bottom of it. That is where they put him, their brother, and then the text delivers what I believe is the most quietly devastating sentence in the book of Genesis. And they sat down to eat bread. That is the whole verse. They sat down to eat bread. Within earshot of that hole in the ground, 10 men unpacked their lunch. They passed the food around. They chewed. Somebody presumably said something about the weather, about the flocks, about the price of grain, because that is what men talk about over a meal. And the meal happened. The Bible insists that the meal happened, right there, on the lip of their brother's grave. I will not add one word of dialogue to that scene. Scripture gave it to us with no adornment at all. And the bare fact of it is heavier than anything I could invent. They ate bread. Hold on to the bread. Bread is going to come back in this story in a way that none of those 10 men chewing on that hillside could possibly imagine. Now, where is Joseph in this scene? What is he doing at the bottom of that stone throat while his brothers eat? Go, look. Read Genesis 37 as many times as you want. Search every verse of it. The boy in the pit makes no sound at all. The chapter records the color of the coat and the dryness of the cistern. It records the exact price he sold for and the spice cargo of the caravan that carried him off. It gives you inventory and geography and 20 pieces of silver, and it does not give you one syllable from the bottom of that pit. Did he scream? Did he beg? Did he call each of their names in turn, oldest to youngest, trying to find one brother whose heart might still have a soft place? The page goes silent. Genesis 37 films, the whole crime with the sound turned off, and for 22 years. That is how the story stays. Hold on to that silence. I am telling you now, so you will be ready when it happens. This story is not finished with that silence. There is a verse coming, many chapters and many years downstream, where the sound comes back on. And when it does, it will come from the last 10 mouths on earth you would expect That is all I will say tonight. File it away. The Bible does not lose evidence. Sometimes it just seals it for 2 decades. But somebody listening right now knows the bottom of that cistern personally. So let us stop pretending this is only about Joseph. You have made noise in a pit before. You told somebody what was being done to you, and the room carried on eating. You cried out in a house, in a church, in a family, and the people with the power to pull you up passed the bread instead. And ever since, a voice in the dark has been telling you that your cry landed on nothing, that it echoed off stone and died in the air, that nobody heard, and so, in some final sense, it did not count. I need you to look at what actually happened next in this story, because the voice in the dark is about to lose an argument. A caravan appears on the horizon. Ishmaelite traders coming down from Gilead, camels loaded with gum, balsam, and myrrh, headed for Egypt. And Judah, brother number 4, has the entrepreneurial idea that turns a murder into a transaction. What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? He says, "Come, let us sell him. 20 pieces of silver change hands." Roughly the going rate for a young male slave. About 2 years of a shepherd's wages. Split 10 ways. 2 shekels a man. That is the number. Friends, do the division and let it sit on you. Each brother's share of Joseph came to about a month's pay. They pulled him up out of the pit with rope, and for one moment his heart must have jumped, because hands were finally reaching for him. And then he saw the traders counting coins, and he understood what the hands were for. And here is where I want you to stand still and watch something, because a detail is hiding in plain sight in this passage, and it changes the color of everything. The plan, the first plan, the one they said out loud, was kill him. The pit was the compromise, and the pit, that awful stone throat, that hole in the ground that felt like the end of every promise God ever made, is the thing that held Joseph alive long enough for the caravan to crest the hill. Now hear me, and hear me with both ears, because this is a place where sloppy preaching has hurt real people. The pit was not good. I will not stand here and baptize that hole in the ground. The brothers were not secretly kind. Reuben's half measure was not mercy. And God did not need any of it to accomplish one thing in Joseph's life. What I am telling you is smaller than that and stronger than that. Even in a hole dug by pure hatred. Hatred did not get the last word on what the hole was for. They dug it as a grave. It functioned as a holding cell. They meant it as an ending. It turned out to be a corridor. The men standing at the top of that cistern had all the rope, all the silver, all the power, and all the votes, and they still could not make the pit do the one thing they dug it to do. The wound was real, but the ending was never theirs. That is the first time I have said that sentence tonight. It will not be the last. And every time it comes back, it is going to weigh a little more. So take its measure now while it is young. Nobody is asking you to call the pit a blessing. Nobody is asking you to thank the hands that threw you in. The wound was real. The evil was real. What was never real was their ownership of your ending. They could throw him down. They could not decide what he would become down there. So the caravan turns south, and the boy is walked away in a line of camels loaded with burial spices, and the hill country of his childhood slides off the edge of the world behind him. Meanwhile, his brothers are standing in a field holding the coat. And one of them is about to have an idea involving a goat. And I know what some of you are thinking, because it is the honest next question. Fine, he survived the pit. But preacher, at least Joseph was still Joseph. The day they betrayed me, I lost my whole map, my home, my town, my church, my name in that town. They did not just take people from me. They took the geography. Friend, I am glad you said that, because the very next thing those men did to Joseph was sell the map. There is a man who takes the long way to work now, and the long way runs past a factory with somebody else's name on it. He is 52 years old. For 19 years his name was on that building. Or close enough. His name and his best friend's name. The friend from church. The friend whose kids called him Uncle Dave. The friend who sat next to him at his own father's funeral. They built the shop from 2 vans and a rented bay. And 2 summers ago, that friend sold his half to an out-of-state buyer without a word of warning. Structured the deal in a way the lawyers say was legal, and walked off with a number the man still cannot say out loud without his voice doing something embarrassing. Legal. That was the word everybody kept using. What happened to him was perfectly legal. The way a hurricane is perfectly natural. So now he works the night shift at a distribution warehouse 40 minutes from a house he had to sell. In a town where nobody knows him, and 3 or 4 times a week. Without ever quite deciding to. He takes the long way and drives past the building. He does not turn in. He just slows down a little, the way you slow past an accident, and looks at the new sign, and keeps driving to a life he never once applied for. Here is his question, and I would bet the deed on it being your question too. Some of you, what do you do when somebody else's sin redraws the map of your life? Not just your feelings, the actual map, the house, the town, the church pew, the trajectory. Somebody else made a decision in a room you were not in, and you are the one who had to change your address. Genesis has an answer, and the answer starts with the sound of coins. 20 pieces of silver, counted out into 10 sets of hands on a hillside near Dothan, and a boy with his wrists tied, walking south in a stranger's caravan, wedged between camels loaded with gum, balsam, and myrrh. Slow down and smell that detail, because the Bible chose that cargo for a reason. Balsam and myrrh were the perfumes of the rich, and they were the spices of the embalmer. Egyptians bought them by the ton to prepare their dead, which means Joseph rode toward Egypt for 250 miles, wrapped in the smell of burial. A boy whose family had just declared him dead, traveling in a rolling funeral parlor that did not know it was one. 250 miles is a long time to be 17 and understand, mile by mile, that nobody is coming. The first day, I imagine, some animal part of him still watched the horizon behind the caravan. Reuben had objected. Surely somebody would ride out. By the third day, the hills of home had flattened into land he did not recognize. Then the language around the cook fires stopped being his language. Then the names of the gods changed. Then the great green ribbon of the Nile came up over the horizon with its temples and its painted eyes. And every single mile of it was carrying him further from the map on which every promise of God had a pin in it. The land promised to Abraham was back there. The covenant was back there. The dreams, the sheaves, the bowing stars, all of it was back there, getting smaller. And back there, at that very hour, his father was being handed a coat. You know this part, but do not rush past it. Because there is a person in your life, it might describe, the brothers slaughtered a goat, dipped the coat in its blood, and carried the evidence home with a sentence rehearsed for maximum deniability. We found this. Do you recognize it? They did not even have to say the lie out loud. They built it and let their father's love finish the construction. And Jacob looked at the blood on that fabric, the fabric he himself had commissioned, and wrote the ending they wanted him to write. A wild animal, torn to pieces. My son is dead. And then Genesis gives you one of the saddest sentences in all of Scripture. All his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. Look at who is standing in that circle of comforters. The very men who dug the wound are patting the bandage. For 22 years, Jacob would grieve at a table where most of the chairs were filled by people who knew. They watched him age around a lie they could have corrected with one sentence. Any evening, any of 8,000 evenings, and they let the lie sit at the table like a member of the family. I want to say something gently here to a certain listener. Some of you are grieving a story somebody told you, a version of events, a verdict about a person, a closed case in your family that was closed with somebody's thumb on the scale, and you have built years of sorrow or years of anger on testimony that was never cross-examined. I cannot tell you which story in your life that is. I can tell you, Jacob wept over a coat for 22 years while the truth was alive and wearing chains in Egypt. Some funerals are premature, some of what you have buried. God has merely relocated. Now follow the boy, because the road ends at an auction. Genesis 39, verse 1. Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him. There is a moment in that sentence that we read too fast. A man walked around Joseph the way you walk around a used truck, checked his teeth, checked his shoulders, and paid money for him. The kid who owned the most expensive coat in Canaan became inventory. In one season, he lost his family, his homeland, his language, his freedom, and his name. Because you can be sure the household of Potiphar did not trouble itself with the Hebrew pronunciation. Everything that had ever told Joseph who he was had been stripped, sold, or left behind on the far side of a desert. And it is right there, at the absolute bottom of the map, in the second verse of chapter 39, that the narrator of Genesis leans in and says the sentence, the whole rest of this story hangs on. And the Lord was with Joseph. Read where they put it. Not, and the Lord was with Joseph once things turned around. Not, and the Lord was with Joseph after the promotion. The Hebrew places those words flush against the sale. The Lord was with Joseph, a slave in the house of his Egyptian master. The Bible slams the deed of sale and the presence of God into the same breath. No cushion between them, as if daring you to believe both facts can be true on the same afternoon. The chains were real. The presence was real. The text refuses to let either one erase the other. But now, notice something that will matter for the rest of your life. If you let it. Joseph never heard that sentence. That line is the narrator talking to you, the reader, over Joseph's head. No voice said it into the pit. No angel recited it on the caravan road. God had gone silent after the dreams. Remember, and the silence was still holding. which means Joseph had to live that verse blind, one unmarked day at a time, with no caption under his life, telling him how the story reads from above. You get to read that the Lord was with him. Joseph just had to get up every morning in a strange house, in a strange language, and find out. Friend, that is your arrangement too. Nobody hands you your life with the narration attached. The sentence being written over your worst season is real, and you will not get to read it until later. And the not reading it is called faith. It has never been called anything else. Now, let me clear a piece of bad theology out of the road before we go one more mile, because this is where the story gets handled carelessly. Somebody will look at this chapter and say, "See, the brothers meant it for evil, but really they were just the delivery service. They sold him into his destiny. Egypt is where the dreams needed him." So, in the end, the betrayal was a blessing with bad manners. No, do not put 1 ounce of your weight on that plank, because it will not hold. And worse, it will teach you to send thank you notes to the people who broke you. The brothers did not send Joseph toward his destiny. They sent him away, in hatred, toward what they sincerely intended to be oblivion. They aimed him at nothing. It was God, and God alone, who refused to let their hatred choose where the road came out. 2 parties touched that road. One meant it as a disposal. One meant it as a corridor. Same dust, same camels, same miles. The evil was entirely theirs. The destination was entirely his. Here is the counterfeit hiding in this chapter. And for some of you, it has been driving your car. It is the old life wearing the costume of the only life. It sounds loyal. It sounds like love. It says the real you lives back there, at the old address, before they did what they did. And everything on this side of the betrayal is an exile, a placeholder, a knockoff. And so, a part of you does what that man does with the factory. It takes the long way past the old life. 3 or 4 times a week. In your mind. Slowing down. Looking at the sign. Refusing to turn in anywhere else. But listen to what that costume is hiding. The life you would have had does not exist. It is not waiting back there behind the betrayal. Kept warm. Kept paid up, kept yours. It is a rendering, a ghost your mind draws and redraws at 1:17 in the morning. And every hour you spend commuting to it is an hour billed against the one life that is actually breathing, which is this one, at the new address, where the Bible just told you, the Lord also lives. Because that is the actual scandal of Genesis 39. Verse 2. God did not stay in Canaan with the map and the pins. When they sold the boy off the map, the presence went with the boy. So here is the sentence to carry out of this third turning point. Betrayal can change your address. It cannot evict God from the new one. They moved Joseph 250 miles against his will. And heaven kept the forwarding address. They can do that to you too. Friend, they may have already done it. Changed your city, your church, your last name, your Thanksgiving table. What they cannot do, what no signature on any legal document has ever been able to do, is make the new address God-forsaken. There is no such address. There never has been. And I know the objection, because it is the honest one, and it is already halfway out of your mouth. Preacher, that is a beautiful sentence. But the Lord was with him, is doing an awful lot of work in a story where the man is still a slave. People keep telling me God is with me, And meanwhile I am still cleaning up the mess somebody else made. Still working the night shift of a life I never chose. If that is God with me, what exactly does with me mean when the chains stay on? That may be the best question anybody has asked tonight. And I will not answer it with a slogan. I will answer it with a house in Egypt, where a slave is about to become the most trusted man in the building, and where favor is about to show up, looking absolutely nothing like freedom. On the door of a refrigerator in a 2-bedroom apartment, held up by a magnet from a pizza place, there is a note in a woman's own handwriting, and it says, "This is not my real life." She is 38. She wrote the note 3 years ago, the month the divorce was final. In the month she moved into this apartment with its beige carpet and its view of a parking lot. And at the time, the note was an act of defiance. A flag planted in enemy soil. She was not going to unpack all the way. She was not going to hang pictures. This apartment, this job she took in a hurry. This town her lawyer recommended. All of it was a hallway between the life somebody wrecked and the life she would someday resume. And the note was there to make sure she never got the two confused. 3 years. That note has hung there. 1,000 mornings of reaching past it for the creamer. And this morning, for no reason she could name, she stood at that refrigerator with her coffee and read her own handwriting like a stranger's. And a question walked up out of nowhere and put its hand on her shoulder. If this is not my real life, then who has been living the last 3 years of it? Somebody has been going to that job. Somebody has been learning the names of the neighbors, driving the kids to practice, crying in that beige living room, praying in it, surviving in it, laughing in it at least twice that she can specifically remember. 3 years of a human life have been spent at that address. And the note on the refrigerator has been calling all of it a rough draft. She thought the note was protecting her. Standing there this morning, she started to wonder if it had been robbing her instead. Hold that question, because a slave in Egypt is about to answer it. Genesis 39 picks up in the house of Potiphar, captain of Pharaoh's guard, and the narrator, having just told us the Lord was with Joseph, immediately starts showing receipts. His master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all he did to prosper in his hand. So Joseph found favor in his sight, and served him. Then he made him overseer of his house, and all that he had he put in his hand. Now, before we admire this, let us be honest about what it is and what it is not. Because favor is a church word that has been oversold. Look at what did not change. Joseph woke up every morning of this passage as another man's property. He could be sold at a whim. He could be beaten without recourse. He owned nothing. Not the clothes he stood in, not his own tomorrow. The favor of God settled on his life, visible enough that a pagan officer could see it across a courtyard, and the door of the house stayed locked just the same. Whatever the Lord being with Joseph meant, it did not mean the chains came off. Sit in the discomfort of that, because your Bible does. There is a version of faith sold in this country that says God's presence is proven by upgrades. Presence equals promotion. Presence equals healing. Presence equals the door swinging open. And the corollary, the cruel little corollary, nobody says out loud, is that a locked door must mean an absent God. Joseph's life dismantles that math in 1 chapter. The presence was real. The prosperity in his hands was real. And the man was still a slave. God's presence did not always change Joseph's conditions. It kept changing Joseph, inside conditions that refused to move. So watch what Joseph actually does inside the locked house. Because this is the part of the story almost nobody preaches. And it may be the part you need most. He learns the house. Think about what standing in front of that job actually required. A Hebrew shepherd boy is handed the accounts of an Egyptian aristocrat. That means a new language. Not survival phrases, but numbers, contracts, the vocabulary of grain and linen and labor. It means learning to read a market he had never seen, manage servants who resented him, track planting seasons on a river system that worked nothing like the rain-fed hills of home. Potiphar put all that he had in Joseph's hand. And the text says the man stopped checking the books entirely. He did not concern himself with anything but the food he ate. You do not earn that kind of blind trust from a professional soldier by being spiritual. You earn it with years of flawless, boring, unglamorous competence, delivered one ledger at a time, in a life you never applied for. And here is the detail that should stop you cold. File it away, because it will detonate about 4 chapters from now. The skill set Joseph is building in this house: resource management, food administration, running a large operation under a powerful Egyptian official, is the exact skill set that a job interview in a throne room is going to require of him one day. On about an hour's notice. Not 1 year of this slavery will turn out to be filler. He does not know that. He cannot know that from inside. These are just the years, long and flat and unchosen. From above, something is being stocked on shelves. Now I have to build a guardrail here, and I am going to build it strong. Because a sentence like that last one can slide somewhere poisonous. I am not telling you God enslaved Joseph to train him. Hear the difference. Because your soul may depend on it someday. Slavery was an injustice. Full stop. God did not need the crime. He did not commission the crime. And he has never once needed evil as a teaching tool, any more than he needed the pit to save the boy from murder. What God did was refuse to let the crime own the clock. The brothers stole the years. God declined to let the stolen years be wasted years. The evil supplied the address, and heaven, without ever endorsing the evil, went to work at that address. That is a God worth trusting. A God who needs your abuser is a monster. A God who outbuilds your abuser, on the very lot your abuser dumped you, is a redeemer. Which brings us to the counterfeit living in this chapter. And this one might be on your refrigerator right now. It is waiting, wearing the costume of faith. It talks like this: I am waiting on the Lord. I am believing for the breakthrough. This season is temporary. This town is temporary. This job is temporary. And I refuse to get attached to any of it. Because my real life is on the other side of the door. And settling in would be surrender. It sounds like trust. It quotes verses. And underneath the vocabulary, look at what it is actually doing. It is refusing to plant. It has 1 foot out of every room. It will not learn the house, will not love the neighbors, will not build the skill, will not hang the pictures, because acknowledging this life might somehow make it permanent. That is not waiting on God. Friend, that is a strike, a sit-down strike against your own present, dressed up in Sunday clothes. Here is how you tell the two apart. And you can run this test tonight. Waiting on God plants in the field it did not choose. Waiting on the past, refuses to plant anywhere at all. Joseph waited 22 years, and there was not one idle season in the man. He waited like a farmer, working the dirt in front of him. Faithfulness in Potiphar's house was not a betrayal of the dreams. It was the only available way of being true to them, because the dreams were God's department and the ledgers were his. You do not keep faith with your calling by refusing to live until it arrives. You keep faith with it by being found excellent in the wrong house, the wrong town, the beige apartment, the night shift, the field you would never have picked and cannot yet leave. So here is the sentence for your pocket from this fourth turning point, and somebody should tape it over a note on a refrigerator. You keep calling this season temporary. God may be calling it soil. The apartment you will not unpack in, the job beneath the one they stole, the church where nobody knows your story, the small life after the big collapse. You have been holding your breath in it, calling it the hallway. And all the while it has dirt on the floor and rain overhead. And things grow in conditions like that. Ask the woman at the refrigerator. The 3 years she almost filed under rough draft turn out, en inspection, to contain neighbors, competence, survival, prayer, and at least 2 documented occasions of laughter. That is not a hallway. That is a field in its first seasons. The only question left is whether she will farm it on purpose. Now, everything in Potiphar's house is climbing. The blessing is visible. The trust is total. The ledgers balance. And if this were a simpler story, if this were the story American religion sometimes wishes the Bible told, we would ride this slope straight up to the palace. Faithfulness rewarded floor by floor, and be home in time for the benediction. Genesis is not that book, and thank God, because your life is not that book either. The text ends this golden stretch with one more sentence about Joseph, and it is not about his diligence. Now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. That is a strange note to hang at the end of a chapter about ledgers, until you realize the narrator is not admiring him. The narrator is warning you. Somewhere in that prosperous, orderly, well-run house, a pair of eyes has started following the young overseer down the corridors. Somebody powerful has begun to watch Joseph the way the brothers once watched the coat, seeing something they want, something they feel entitled to, something they will punish him for refusing to hand over. Because it turns out doing everything right does not always keep you safe. Sometimes it just makes you visible, and what happens next in this house will take everything Joseph rebuilt. The trust, the position, the new name he had made for himself out of nothing, and it will tear it all down in a single afternoon, on the strength of a lie told by a person holding, of all things, his clothes. The coat is about to come off again. Friend, and this time, there is no caravan coming. This time, the road out of the room leads straight down to the one place in Egypt lower than slavery. If you have ever done the right thing and paid full price for it anyway, the next turning point was written for you. It is a Thursday afternoon in a hospital conference room, and a nurse with 15 years on the floor is listening to 2 people from Human Resources read a document about her that she does not recognize. 6 weeks ago, she did the thing they train you to do. She reported a supervisor, medication counts that did not add up, charts adjusted after the fact, the kind of thing that ends with a patient dying and a lawyer asking who knew. She followed the policy to the letter. She used the proper channels. She told the truth to the people whose job is receiving the truth. And the truth went into the building, and something else came back out. Because the supervisor had 18 years and a golf schedule and a talent for hallway friendships, and by the time the story finished moving through the building, it had turned around completely. Now there is a file with the nurse's name on it. Words like insubordinate. Words like pattern of conflict. 2 former friends gave statements. The supervisor sat across from investigators. They tell her, and cried. She drives home with her badge in the cup holder because she cannot stand the weight of it around her neck. And one sentence is circling her head like water going down a drain. And it is the most dangerous sentence a believing person can think. I did the right thing. So where were you? If that sentence has ever circled your head, this next room in Joseph's story belongs to you. Walk in slowly. Genesis 39. Joseph is running Potiphar's house. And the narrator has just told us he was handsome in form and appearance. And now we find out why the warning was posted. His master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph, and she said, "Lie with me. Understand the mechanics of what is happening here. Because this is not a romance, and the Bible does not film it as one. This is power. She is the wife of the captain of the guard. He is property. There is no police report a slave can file. No witness who will take his word over hers. No version of this where he has any protection except the character inside his own chest. And she does not ask once. The text says she spoke to Joseph day after day. Every morning he woke up knowing the house he worked in contained a trap that reset itself overnight. Day after day. Some tests are a moment. This one was a season. Now listen to his answer. Because in a book full of famous sentences, this one deserves more fame than it gets. Joseph refuses. And he explains himself. My master has kept back nothing from me but you, because you are his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? Look at where that sentence ends. Against God. He does not say, how can I do this and risk my position? He does not say, how can I do this and get caught? Getting caught was barely a danger. And both of them knew it. The house was empty of consequences. All that was standing in that room was a slave, a powerful woman, and a God who had not said one word to Joseph in over a decade. And the slave treats the silent God as the most real presence in the building. 13 years of silence. And the boy still will not sin against the voice he has not heard since he was 17. Whatever you call that, call it expensive. Faithfulness always costs the most in the seasons when heaven says the least. Then comes the day. The house is empty. The text is careful to tell us, no men of the household were inside. She has arranged the emptiness, or fate has handed it to her. And she does not speak this time. She grabs him. She catches him by his garment and says, lie with me. And Joseph does the only thing left when strength and speech have both run out of road. He runs. He leaves his garment in her hand and flees and gets himself out of the house. And there she stands, in an empty corridor, holding his clothes. Stop. Stand still right here. Because you have seen this before, and the Bible wants you to feel the echo in your bones. This is the second time in this young man's life that somebody is holding his clothing while he is powerless to stop what they do with it. His brothers held a coat soaked in goat's blood and told his father a story about his death. Now, this woman holds a torn work garment and prepares to tell her husband a story about his character. Twice. Twice, somebody has laid hands on what Joseph wears and used it to publish a lie about who Joseph is. The first lie killed him in his father's heart. This one is about to kill him in Egypt. And notice what the fabric actually proves in each case. Because this is the bitter genius of the setup. The coat proved only that they had the coat. The garment proves only that she has the garment. Fabric is not testimony, but fabric in the hands of a storyteller becomes whatever the storyteller needs. And Joseph, for the second time in his life, is about to be convicted by his own clothes. She calls the household servants first, builds her audience, gets the story rehearsed and witnessed. See, he says, the Hebrew slave came in to mock me. I screamed. He fled and left his garment. Then she keeps the garment beside her. The text says, until his master came home. Picture Joseph somewhere in that house through those hours, knowing what is laid out on the table in her room, knowing what is coming, unable to do one thing about it. Then Potiphar hears the story, and his anger burns, and Joseph is taken, and there is no trial scene in the text because there was no trial. A slave got no trial. There is just a sentence, in both meanings of the word. And Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison. He did everything right. Read the chapter again with a clean heart and try to find his mistake. He worked with excellence. He honored his master. He resisted a season of daily temptation without a single witness to applaud him. He named God in a country full of other gods. He ran from the sin, physically ran, which is exactly what wisdom instructs. And the reward for the entire performance was losing the room, losing the rank, losing the reputation he had rebuilt from nothing, and going down, again, into a hole he did not dig. Somebody needs me to sit in this for a minute instead of rushing to the happy part. So I will. The accusation was false. The imprisonment was unjust. And I am not going to hand you the sentence some preachers hand you here. The one that says God engineered the frame job because it was the fastest route to the palace. Do not put that in your theology, friend, because one day you will need a God you can trust. And a God who frames the innocent to move them up the ladder is not him. God did not need her lie. God did not write her lie. What God did, and watch him do it, is stay. The lie put Joseph in a cell, and could not put him outside the presence. She authored the injustice. She could not author his abandonment, because here is the counterfeit crouching in this chapter. And for church people, it may be the deadliest one of all five. It is integrity, wearing the costume of an insurance policy. It builds quietly. Over years of doing things right, I tithe. Iserbe. I stayed pure. I told the truth. And underneath all of it, unspoken, a contract takes shape. I do the right thing, and God keeps the bad thing away. Obedience in, protection out. It feels like faith. It feels like faith. And then, one Thursday afternoon, you do the rightest thing of your life and lose everything anyway. And the contract shreds. And most people, standing in the shredded paper, conclude one of two things. Either God broke the deal, or I must have secretly deserved this. Both conclusions are wrong, and both of them will bleed you for years. Because the contract itself was never real. God never signed it. Obedience was never a purchase. It is a declaration of who you belong to. And it stays true on the days it pays, and it stays true on the days it costs. And Joseph refused that woman without any promise of protection on the table. He did not do right because doing right was safe. He did right because he was not for sale. Not to her, and not to fear either. And now watch two small mercies moving under the wreckage, quiet as roots under a sidewalk. First, the sentence itself. A slave accused of assaulting a noblewoman does not go to prison in the ancient world. He goes to the executioner that afternoon, and the paperwork is one line long. Joseph goes to prison, and the text is oddly specific about which one. The place where the king's prisoners were confined. Some scholars wonder if Potiphar's rage had a crack of doubt running through it. Whether 19 years of flawless ledgers whispered that the story did not add up, and death quietly became custody. The text does not say. What the text shows is a blade that had every legal right to fall, and did not. And the cell he lands in, of all the cells in Egypt, is the one connected to the palace, the one where royal prisoners wait, the one address in the whole country where a forgotten slave could ever cross paths with the men who pour Pharaoh's wine. I am not calling the prison good. I am telling you, the aim was strange. Even his catastrophes kept landing in significant places. Second, verse 21, and read it slowly, because you have heard this melody before. But the Lord was with Joseph in the prison. Same sentence, same words that met him at the bottom of the slave sale. The narrator said it when Joseph hit Egypt in chains. And now Joseph descends one more level, from slave to convict, from the house to the hole, and the sentence just goes down with him. Uncomplaining, like it has no flaw, it will not visit. Potiphar's wife could take his garment, his job, and his name. The one thing in that house she could not lay hands on was that sentence. It does not live in fabric. It never has. He lost the coat again. Friend, he lost the room, the rank, the reputation, all of it. In one afternoon, on the strength of a lie. The wound was real, but the ending was never theirs. So here is the sentence for your pocket from this fifth turning point. And if you are driving home from your own conference room right now, grip it hard. Doing the right thing does not always keep you out of the pit. It decides who you are when you land. Integrity is not armor for your circumstances. It is armor for your soul. And those are different protections. And the second one is worth more. The nurse with the badge in her cup holder did not fail. Her righteousness did not malfunction. It did exactly what righteousness does. It kept her from becoming what that building wanted her to become. And no file in any drawer can take that from her. Joseph walked into that prison stripped of everything except the one thing he had chosen for himself. And it turned out to be the only thing the story actually needed him to keep. But I hear the next objection already, and it is a hard one. So say it out loud. Fine. Preacher, he kept his integrity. But a prison at least has a door, and doors open. My waiting has no door on it at all. Nobody with any power even remembers my name. I am not being tested. I am being forgotten. Friend, I need you to meet the next man in this story. He is going to look Joseph in the eye. Receive from him the best news of his entire life. Make him one small promise on his way out the door. And then forget the man completely. For 2 years. While Joseph counts the mornings in a cell. Because the next turning point is not a betrayal of hatred. It is the other kind. The casual kind. The kind that does not even hate you enough to remember you exist. There is a man sitting in a parked car outside a church on a Wednesday night, watching the lights through the glass doors, and he is doing math he should never have started. He was a deacon for 11 years at a church across town, head of the building committee, the man they called when the pipes froze at 2 in the morning, the man who unlocked the doors before sunrise services and locked them after funerals. When his marriage came apart 3 years ago, and it came apart for reasons that lived entirely on her side of the house. The phone calls changed, and then the seating changed, and then the silence came. That special church silence that never announces itself. And eventually he did the leaving that everyone seemed to be waiting for. Tonight, in the car, he opened his contacts and counted 214 names from that old congregation. 11 years of potlucks and hospital visits and men's retreats. 214 numbers. In 3 years, exactly 2 of them have called. He knows their birthdays. Still, most of them, he could tell you the birthdays. And not one of the 212 appears to remember that he is alive. That is the wound this chapter is about. Not the hot betrayal of Dothan. The knife in daylight. The cold one. The one where nobody hates you. They just close the drawer you were in. Genesis. Chapter 40. The prison where the king's prisoners are kept. And even here, the pattern from Potiphar's house repeats. Because the keeper of the prison looks at Joseph and does what everyone who supervises Joseph eventually does. He hands him the keys. The keeper committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners, and whatever they did there, he was the doer of it. The most trustworthy man in Egypt is a convict now, running the cell block with the same excellence he ran the estate. Faithfulness has followed him down again. It always goes down with him. So does the sentence. The Lord was with Joseph, even here, especially here. Then one morning, 2 new prisoners arrive, and they are not ordinary men. Pharaoh's cupbearer and Pharaoh's baker. 2 officers of the crown, caught in some palace offense the text does not bother explaining, and they are placed, of all the arrangements in all the prisons of Egypt, under Joseph's care, and after some time in custody, both of them dream on the same night, and both wake up shaken. And now comes the verse I want to frame and hang in your house, because it may be the quietest miracle in the entire story of Joseph, and almost nobody preaches it. Joseph came in to them in the morning, and looked at them, and saw that they were sad, and he asked them, "Why do your faces look so sad today?" Do you see it? Do you see what that question proves about the man asking it? Count what has been done to this man. Sold at 17 by his own blood. Enslaved in a foreign country. Framed by a predator and buried in a prison for the crime of refusing her. He is now somewhere past a decade into an injustice that has swallowed his whole young manhood. He has received no visit, no letter, no explanation from heaven. And on this particular morning, this man looks at 2 Egyptian officials, members of the ruling class of the empire that holds him in chains. And he notices that their faces have changed. He is studying faces. He has been in the hole for years, and he is still reading the weather in other people's eyes. Still moved enough by a stranger's bad morning to stop and ask about it. Friend, the pit takes some people and turns them into a person who can only see their own pain. You have met that person. Pain became their address. Then their citizenship. Then their entire field of vision. Until every conversation bent back toward their wound, the way water bends toward a drain. Nobody gets to judge them for it, least of all here. Because the gravity of a great wound is real, and it pulls hard, which is exactly why this verse deserves its frame. More than 10 years into the gravity, Joseph is still asking other people why they are sad. The betrayal explains his pain. He has refused to let it define his character. The wound has all this man's history, and it still does not have custody of his eyes. The two men tell him their dreams, and Joseph, hear this, gives the interpretations away for free, saying, "Do not interpretations belong to God?" Even the gift still gets credited upward. A decade into the silence. The cupbearer's dream means life. Restoration in 3 days. His old position back. Pharaoh's cup in his hand again. The baker's dream means death. And Joseph tells him the truth too, which is its own kind of integrity. Telling a doomed man the truth gently, instead of selling him comfort. And then, for the first time in the entire recorded story, Joseph asks for something for himself. 13 years, give or take, and the text has never once shown him begging. Not in the pit, where the sound was turned off. Not on the caravan. Not at the auction. Not in the frame job. Here, finally, to a man about to walk back into the palace, Joseph makes his one request. And you can hear 13 years pressing through the politeness of it. Only remember me, when it is well with you, and please show kindness to me, and make mention of me to Pharaoh, and get me out of this house. For indeed I was stolen away from the land of the Hebrews, and also I have done nothing here that they should put me into the dungeon. Look closely at his words, because there is a bruise inside them. The word he uses for dungeon, in the Hebrew, is bor, the pit. It is the same word Genesis used for the dry cistern outside Dothan. 13 years, a 250-mile move, a new language, a new name, and in Joseph's private vocabulary, he is still in the same hole his brothers threw him into. The geography changed. The word never did. Egypt is just Dothan with better architecture. If you have ever changed cities, changed churches, changed marriages, changed everything, and looked up one ordinary Tuesday and realized you are still at the bottom of the original wound, Joseph has one word for you, and it is bor, and he speaks your language. The cupbearer is restored in 3 days. Exactly as Joseph said, lifted out, cleaned up, standing at Pharaoh's elbow with the cup in his hand. Alive, because a Hebrew prisoner told him the truth in a cell. And then Genesis 40 closes with 2 of the coldest lines in the Old Testament. Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. Read how the Hebrew does it. Twice. He did not remember, and he forgot. The text says it forward and then says it backward. A double negation, as if one telling could not carry the weight. As if the narrator himself needed you to feel the door click shut twice. And then, chapter 41 opens with a timestamp that has its own cruelty built into the grammar. And it came to pass, at the end of 2 full years, in the Hebrew, shnatayim yamim, 2 years of days. The Bible did not have to say it that way. It could have said 2 years and moved on. The way historians count. It counts the other way. The prisoner's way. The way a man counts who has no reason to believe the count will ever end. 2 years of days. Somewhere around 730 mornings of waking up on a prison floor, listening for footsteps in the corridor. And the footsteps come. Some mornings the footsteps actually come. and they are always for somebody else. 730 evenings of doing the math on a man's memory. He got out in 3 days. Just like I told him. Maybe the first week he was busy. Maybe the first month there was no right moment. By month 6, even hope needs a story to survive on. And by year 2, there are no stories left. There is just the count. And here is the counterfeit sitting in the dark of that cell. And I would bet money it has sat in the dark with you. It is being remembered by people, wearing the costume of being remembered by God. We run the two together. We take the phone that does not ring. The door nobody knocks on. The 2 calls out of 214 contacts. And we submit it all as evidence in a case about heaven. Nobody remembers me. Therefore he has forgotten me. The silence of people becomes in the dark, indistinguishable from the silence of God. But they are not the same silence. Friend, they have never been the same silence. The cupbearer forgot. That is a fact of the story. And it was his failure, his ingratitude, his shabby little debt left unpaid. And God did not make him forget. God does not need to break one man's gratitude to work out another man's future. But run the ledger of those same 2 years. The cupbearer forgot Joseph. The prison held Joseph. And neither one of them, not the man's memory and not the iron door, owned the calendar. The date of Joseph's release was never in the cupbearer's pocket. It never spent one night there. Now let me talk straight to the person in year 2. Because everything in this chapter has been walking toward you. And I promised you no easy answers. Those 2 years were not fast-forwarded for Joseph. That is what we do to them from out here. We skip ahead, because we have read chapter 41, and we know what morning is coming. Joseph did not know. He lived the 730 days at full length, one at a time, with no trailer for the next scene, no verse in his hands, no voice in his ears. And what did faith look like across those days? I will tell you what the text shows. It looked like a man running a cell block well, keeping his corner of a prison clean and fair, reading faces, asking sad men why they were sad, doing today with excellence, without one shred of evidence that tomorrow would be different. Some faith looks like fire falling from the sky. Most faith, the vast majority of the faith that has ever been lived on this earth, looks like a forgotten man in a small room doing today well. Nobody applauds it. Heaven audits it, and no year of it. Hear me, not one of the 2 years of days was off the record. Forgotten by the palace is not forgotten by heaven. The 2 record books have never once matched. So put that in your pocket for this 6th turning point, and hold it. Whoever you are, in the parked car outside the church, in year 2 of the resume with no callbacks, in the long stretch after the divorce, when even your own siblings stopped asking how you are, the count you are keeping is real, and it is not the only count being kept. The man forgot Joseph. The wound was real, but the ending was never theirs. And now, friend, I need you to brace yourself, because I have been walking you slow for 6 chapters. Down and down, pit and house and cell and count, and you have earned what happens next. Somewhere north of that prison, on a carved bed in a painted palace, the most powerful man on the face of the earth is about to have a nightmare he cannot shake. And when he wakes up, sweating, at dawn, he is going to set in motion the fastest morning in the entire Old Testament. Because here is what nobody in year 2 can see. And I am going to show it to you. When God finally moves in this story, He is not going to move at the speed of those 2 years. He is going to move at the speed of one sentence, spoken by a man with a cup in his hand and an old debt on his conscience. And by sundown of a single day, everything, and I mean everything, is going to be different. A woman in Ohio tells this story about the night her husband got his kidney. 4 years on the transplant list. 4 years of dialysis 3 days a week. 4 years of watching him grey out by inches. 4 years of a phone that never rang with the only call that mattered. She says you learn to live at the speed of waiting. You stop making summer plans. You measure life in lab results. The calendar stops being a calendar and becomes a wall. Then one night the phone rang at 3 in the morning, and a nurse said one sentence: "We have a kidney, and we need him here by 6. And she says the strangest part was the whiplash. 4 years where nothing moved. And then, suddenly, everything was moving at once. Bags thrown in the car. Hazard lights. Empty highway. Paperwork flying. And by sunrise, the whole geography of their life had changed." She said, "I kept thinking, 4 years. And then it all came down to one phone call and 3 hours. Hear me carefully. That is not a promise about your timeline. I do not know your timeline. It is a testimony about God's capability. And it is the whole architecture of Genesis 41. Because after 13 years of nothing moving, Joseph's life is about to change completely. And it is going to happen before lunch. Watch how fast this chapter runs. Pharaoh dreams. 7 fat cows come up out of the Nile, and 7 gaunt ones swallow them whole. He wakes, sleeps again, dreams again. 7 full heads of grain, devoured by 7 withered ones, and in the morning his spirit was troubled. The text says, "And he calls for all the magicians of Egypt and all its wise men, the entire intellectual apparatus of the most sophisticated empire on earth, and none of them can touch it. And standing in that room, holding the royal cup, is a man with a 2-year-old debt on his conscience." The cupbearer steps forward. "I remember my faults this day," he says, and he tells Pharaoh about a prison, and a young Hebrew, and 2 dreams that came true to the letter and to the day. In one conversation, the forgetting of 2 full years is reversed. 730 silent mornings, undone in a single sentence, spoken in the right room at the right moment. Do not miss what that means. Your name can be spoken in rooms you cannot enter. Your name can sit in a man's memory like a seed in winter. And one morning, without any warning, sprout. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him quickly out of the pit. There is that word again. Bor, the pit, the exact Hebrew word from the cistern outside Dothan. The word Joseph himself used for this prison. The narrator chose it on purpose. And now, the story closes a loop 13 years wide. The first time hands pulled Joseph up out of a bore. They belonged to his brothers, and they pulled him up to sell him. This time the hands belong to messengers of the king, and they are pulling him up because the most powerful man alive is asking for him by name. Same word, same motion, different author, and they brought him quickly. The Hebrew practically sprints. After a story that has crawled through years like a man crossing a desert, the verbs suddenly cannot keep up with the events. He shaved. He changed his clothes. He came to Pharaoh. He changed his clothes. Are you counting? Because this is the fourth time in this story that Joseph's garments change hands. And stop and feel the difference. The coat of favor, torn off by his brothers. The work garment, torn off by a predator. The prison clothes, put on him by injustice. 3 times, somebody else stripped him, and the clothes were always taken. This is the first time in 13 years that the clothes change because a door is opening instead of closing. He shaves his face Egyptian clean, puts on garments fit for a throne room, and walks out of the boar into the presence of Pharaoh. And no chains go with him. Now, the moment the whole empire is watching, Pharaoh looks at this 30-year-old Hebrew and says, "I have heard it said of you that you can understand a dream, to interpret it." 13 years of slavery and prison are standing in that sentence. Every injustice Joseph ever swallowed is standing in that sentence. And here, right here, is where a lesser man cashes in. A lesser man says yes, I have a gift, and starts negotiating. A bitter man says yes. And by the way, let me tell you what your officials did to me. Joseph, 30 seconds into the biggest room of his life, says this, "It is not in me. God will give Pharaoh an answer of peace. It is not in me." 13 years of the worst that people can do to a man, and it did not teach him bitterness. And 13 years of carrying a rare gift did not teach him self-importance either. The suffering was not allowed to make him cynical, and the gift was not allowed to make him proud. The very first thing this man does, with the spotlight of the ancient world on his face, is hand the credit upward. To the God who has not spoken one audible word to him since he was 17. Whatever the years took from Joseph, they never got their hands on his address. He still knows exactly where the power comes from, and exactly where it does not. Then he interprets. The dreams are one dream. He says, 7 years of abundance are coming to Egypt, and after them 7 years of famine so severe, the abundance will be forgotten. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do, and the doubling of the dream means it is fixed, and it is coming soon. And then Joseph does something no one asked him to do. And this is the detail that changes everything. He keeps talking. He stops interpreting and starts planning. Now, therefore, let Pharaoh select a discerning and wise man, and set him over the land. Appoint officers. Take 1/5 of the harvest in the 7 good years. Store grain in the cities under royal authority. Hold it in reserve against the 7 years of famine. So the land does not perish. Stand back and look at what just came out of this man's mouth. A national taxation rate, a storage infrastructure, a staffing plan, a 14-year fiscal strategy, delivered without notes, on an hour's notice, by a man who woke up that morning on a prison floor. Pharaoh asked for a dream reading. Joseph handed him a government, and now asked the only question worth asking. Where did a shepherd's son learn national resource management? You know where. You watched him learn it. Every ledger in Potiphar's house. Every planting season on a river system he had to study from scratch. Every year of administrating a prison, rationing supplies, managing men, running an operation inside somebody else's walls. 13 years that looked like pure loss from the inside were quietly assembling the exact resume this one morning would demand. Hear the guardrail one more time, because it holds here too. God did not need the crime to build the man, but God refused to waste 1 hour the crime created. The brothers stole the years. Heaven kept the receipts, and the proof came out of Joseph's mouth in a throne room. fluent, structured, and ready. Before he even knew he was interviewing, promotion did not create Joseph's capacity. It revealed what the hidden years had already built. Pharaoh looks at his court and says, "Can we find such a one as this? A man in whom is the Spirit of God." And then, to Joseph, the words that end 13 years in a single breath. "You shall be over my house. Only in the throne will I be greater than you." And Pharaoh took his signet ring off his own hand and put it on Joseph's hand, and clothed him in garments of fine linen, and put a gold chain around his neck. Garments of fine linen. Count them now. All 5, the coat of a favored son, the stripped garment at the pit, the work clothes left in a liar's hand, the prison uniform of a forgotten man, and now the linen of a ruler with a king's ring over it. 5 outfits, 5 verdicts that other people issued about who Joseph was. Loved one, victim, criminal, convict, Lord. And here is the entire point of the thread. So do not miss it. Every garment changed. The man inside them did not. They kept changing what he wore. God kept preserving who he was. The clothes were never the story. Friend, they never are. The world will dress you in its opinion of you, decade by decade, and the labels will swing wildly, and none of them, not the best one and not the worst one, ever gets a vote on the person breathing inside the fabric. So Joseph rides in the second chariot. Egypt bows. He is 30 years old. He marries, and the famine years are still far off. And 2 sons are born to him in the years of plenty. And it is here, right here at the summit, that the text quietly shows you something almost nobody preaches. And it is the reason this story is not over. Joseph names his boys. And in the ancient world, names are testimony. The firstborn he calls Manasseh, saying, "God has made me forget all my toil and all my father's house." The second he calls Ephraim, "For God has caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction." Beautiful names, grateful names, and read them again, slowly, because there is a crack of light showing under the door of this man's heart. God has made me forget, he says, and he says it in a name he will speak out loud every single day for the rest of his life. Friend, you do not name your son after the thing you forgot. Naming is remembering. Every time that boy runs across a courtyard and his father calls him for dinner, the word forget will come out of Joseph's mouth. And the toil and the father's house will walk right through the door of the sentence. And Ephraim, fruitful. Yes, thank God, fruitful. But fruitful where? In the land of my affliction, 8 years into the palace, with the ring on his hand and the gold at his throat. That is still Joseph's word for Egypt. Affliction. The man at the top of the world is healed enough to be grateful and honest enough to still be counting the cost. Both at once. In the names of his own children, which brings us to the counterfeit standing in the throne room. And this one wears the nicest clothes of all 5 so far. It is promotion wearing the costume of healing. We believe it instinctively in this country. We believe the ring fixes the pit. Get the title, get the house, get the vindication, get remarried, get the settlement, and the wound underneath will surely close on its own. Because look how well everything turned out. But altitude is not the same thing as healing. Friend, you can run an empire with a 17-year-old's wound still sitting in the control room. Plenty of people do. Plenty of people are doing it right now. In corner offices and pulpits and beautiful kitchens. Promoted to the top of lives that Dothan still quietly governs. Joseph has the whole kingdom now. Everything but the throne itself. What he does not have, what no chariot and no signet ring can hand a man, is the answer to one buried question. What happens if I ever see their faces again? For 9 more years, that question can sleep, because there is an entire desert between Joseph and the men who dug the pit, and no reason on earth for them to cross it. Then the famine comes, exactly on schedule, exactly as severe as the dream promised. And it does not stop at Egypt's border. It walks north, into Canaan, into the hill country, into the tents of an old man with 10 grown sons and 1 remaining boy of Rachel's. And it begins to empty their storehouses 1 sack at a time. And one day, in the audience hall of the Lord of Egypt, where hungry foreigners come by the hundreds to buy grain, 10 weathered shepherds from Canaan shuffle forward in the line and bow down before the governor with their faces to the earth. He recognizes them instantly. They have no idea who he is. There is a mechanic in Tennessee who owns his own shop now. A good one. 12 bays and a waiting room with decent coffee. And one Friday afternoon, 2 summers ago, the door chimed and his uncle walked in. 22 years since the man had seen that face outside of a photograph. He was 12 when it happened, so he mostly understood it later, in pieces, from documents and from his mother, crying at the kitchen table, the family land, 3 generations of it, and a version of his grandfather's will that appeared late and read strangely, and a lawyer who was the uncle's hunting buddy. And by the time the dust settled, his father had lost the farm. And then the fight went out of his father in a way that never fully came back. They moved twice. The word they used in his house for that season was simply, "What happened?" And now the man responsible is standing at his counter, grey and thinner, holding a set of keys. His truck is dying. He is passing through. He needs it looked at today. And, he adds, lowering his voice, money is tight right now. Is there any way to work something out on the price? He does not recognize his own nephew. 12-year-olds change in 22 years, and the mechanic stands there with the clipboard in his hand, holding every single card in the deck, and discovers that the moment he has rehearsed in the shower for 2 decades feels nothing like the rehearsal. In the rehearsal there was a speech. There was a reckoning. In the actual moment there is just a tired old man who needs something, and a grown man behind a counter whose hands have gone cold, and a question hanging in the air that no rehearsal ever covered. What do you do when the person who broke your family walks, without knowing it, into a room where you hold all the power? Genesis 42 has been waiting 3,000 years to answer that question. So, come stand in the audience hall. The famine has emptied Canaan's pantries, and Jacob has heard there is grain in Egypt, and he sends 10 sons south to buy some. Not Benjamin. Read that detail and ache a little, because it means the old wound is still setting policy in that family. Jacob has exactly 1 son of Rachel left, and he will not let the boy travel with his brothers. And 22 years of unspoken things live inside that decision. So the 10 come down, and they are funneled with all the other foreign buyers toward the man who controls every sack of grain in the known world. And Genesis says it plainly. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed down before him with their faces to the earth. The sheaves, standing in a field in Dothan, 17 years old. He told them a dream, and they hated him for it. And here it is, happening, literal, faces on stone, 22 years late and exactly on time. And the text says, Joseph remembered the dreams which he had dreamed about them. Now, if this story were written by the human heart, we know what comes next. This is the revenge scene. This is the moment every betrayed person has scripted in the dark. The moment the mechanic rehearsed in the shower. He has the army, the throne, the grain, and the anonymity. They are foreigners in his jurisdiction, and nobody on earth would question anything he chose to do with them. Total power, total impunity, and the men who sold him standing in the perfect position for it. Instead, Genesis gives us something stranger and infinitely more true. Joseph speaks to them harshly through an interpreter, accuses them of being spies, and starts asking questions about their family. And over the next several verses, this man who owns the entire situation begins to behave like something other than a king. He behaves like a man conducting an investigation, because that is exactly what this is. And if you do not see it as an investigation, you will misread everything he does for the next 3 chapters. Understand his position. 22 years of silence. He does not know if his father is alive. He does not know if Benjamin is alive. And hear that fear specifically, because Benjamin is the other son of Rachel, the other candidate for a coat, the boy who inherited Joseph's exact position in that family the day Joseph disappeared. Are these 10 men still the men from Dothan? Has the machinery that destroyed one favorite son been running these 22 years? And is Benjamin in it? A reunion is not the first order of business. Friend, the first order of business is the truth. So he builds a test. 9 of you stay. 1 goes home and brings back this youngest brother you mention. Then he softens it, keeps only Simeon bound, sends the rest home with grain, and quietly has every man's silver returned into the mouth of his sack. And it is right here, in the middle of the interrogation, with Joseph standing close and the interpreter making them believe their words are private, that it happens. The thing I told you about in chapter 2, the thing I told you to file away. The brothers turn to each other, rattled. 22 years of buried cargo shifting in the hold. And they say, in their own tongue, in front of the governor, they believe cannot understand a word. This, we are truly guilty concerning our brother, for we saw the anguish of his soul when he pleaded with us, and we would not hear. Therefore, this distress has come upon us. We saw the anguish of his soul when he pleaded with us. There it is, 22 years. And there it finally is. Do you remember standing at the pit in chapter 37, listening to that awful silence? The Bible showed you the coat and the cistern and the 20 pieces of silver, and it refused to record 1 syllable from the bottom of that hole. And I told you the story was not finished with that silence. And here, 2 decades and 8 chapters downstream, the sound comes back on. And listen to whose mouths carry it. Not the narrator, not Joseph. The brothers, the very men who bit down on their bread and would not hear the boy, are the ones who finally put his screaming on the record. He pleaded with us. We saw the anguish of his soul. They heard everything. Friend, every word from the bottom of that pit went in and lodged, and lived in them for 22 years, riding along to every meal, every harvest, every night's sleep, waiting The page kept the cry off the record. Their consciences never did. And somebody listening tonight needs this specific medicine. So let me pour it slowly. You cried out once. In a pit, somebody dug for you. And the room kept eating. And for years, the silence afterward has been telling you that your cry landed on nothing. Hear what this verse just proved. It landed. It always lands. The people who would not respond to your cry are not the same as people who did not hear it. They heard it. It went into them. And whatever they did with their faces, the sound found a place inside them that no amount of bread could ever quite bury. The Bible waited 22 years to put that cry on the record. And then it chose the guilty to read it into evidence. And I do not believe for 1 second that the timing or the casting was an accident. Nothing stays buried in this story, not even sound. And Joseph, standing 3 feet away, understanding every word while they think no one hears. Every syllable in the mother tongue he has not been addressed in for 22 years. He turned himself away from them. The text says, and wept. The first weeping. Scripture will count 7 times that this man weeps before his story closes. 7. For the most powerful official on earth, and this is where it starts. With the sound of his own teenage voice coming back to him out of the mouths of the men who ignored it. He gathers himself, comes back, finishes the arrangements like the administrator he is. But something has cracked open that no signet ring ever touched. And the investigation is no longer only about Benjamin's safety. It is about a question underneath the question. Is it possible? Is it even possible that these are no longer the men from Dothan? Because that is what the tests are. All of them. And let me clear this up permanently. Since Joseph gets slandered on this point from pulpits every year, the returned silver, the demand for Benjamin, the accusation, and the trap still to come. None of it is a cat playing with mice. None of it is revenge on layaway. Watch his hands, not the harsh voice he puts on. He is feeding them while testing them. He fills their sacks, returns their money, and will keep feeding this family through the whole ordeal. A torturer does not weep behind the door. Friend, an investigator gathering evidence with his own heart on the table. That man weeps. Joseph is asking the only questions that matter before a dead man dares come back to life in front of his killers. Has anything changed? Is my father alive? Is the boy who took my place safe? Or is he next? Is their guilt the real thing? Or just fear wearing guilt's clothing now that somebody powerful is asking? He is not making them suffer. He is finding out whether it is safe to resurrect. And that distinction, right there, is the hinge of this whole chapter. And it is the first of the 2 answers I promised you at the beginning of this journey. The ones that run against what pulpits sometimes preach. So hear it in full. Forgiveness and trust are not the same decision. Somewhere along the way, church people got handed a counterfeit, and it is forgiveness, wearing the costume of amnesia. It teaches that real forgiveness deletes the file. That if you have truly forgiven, you owe the person your old openness back. Immediately. No question, no tests, no boundaries. And that any caution on your part is proof of a grudge. And under that teaching, thousands of wounded believers have been pressured back into the blast radius of unchanged people, and been destroyed twice, and been told the second destruction was their own fault for not forgiving hard enough. Look at Joseph and be free of that forever. By the end of this story, he will prove he forgave these men down to the bottom of his soul. And he still tested them. He forgave freely, and he verified thoroughly. And those two things lived in the same chest without contradiction, because they answer two different questions. Forgiveness answers, will I release my claim on repaying this wound? That one is between you and God, and it can be settled tonight, unilaterally, no matter what the other person ever does. Trust answers a different question entirely. Is it safe to hand this person access to me again? And that one, friend, is not settled by your mercy. It is settled by their fruit. Forgiveness is free. Trust has receipts. God asks the first of you. Only demonstrated change can ask the second. The wound was real, but the ending was never theirs. And do you see what that refrain is doing now? This fourth time that it could not do before. At the pit, it was a promise. In the prison, it was a discipline. Tonight, it is simply a description, because you are watching it come true in real time. The men who dug the pit are standing in the middle of it, bowing, and the man they threw away is deciding whether they eat. So the 9 go home with grain and return silver and a hostage brother behind them. And they tell Jacob everything. And the old man's answer is one of the most heartbroken sentences in Genesis. Joseph is no more. Simeon is no more. And now you would take Benjamin. All these things are against me. And he refuses. For months, apparently, while the grain runs down, he refuses. Until the hunger decides for him. And it is Judah. Mark the name, Judah. The brother who invented the sale. The one who said, what profit is it if we kill him? Let us sell him. Judah is the one who steps forward to his father and says something no one in this family has ever said before. Send the boy with me, and I myself will be surety for him. From my hand you shall require him. If I do not bring him back to you, then let me bear the blame forever. I myself will be surety for him. Hold on to that sentence, because the man who sold one son of Rachel for silver just pledged his own life as collateral for the other one, and he is about to be taken up on it. In a throne room, in front of a governor whose face he cannot read. In the single greatest test of whether a human being can actually change, the silver cup goes into Benjamin's sack next. Friend, the trap Joseph builds is a masterpiece, and it is aimed at one question only. The question underneath every other question in this story. 22 years ago, 10 men stood over a favorite son in trouble and walked away chewing. Given one clean, free consequence, free chance to do it again. To the new favorite, the last son of Rachel. What will they do? What Judah does with that chance is going to break the Lord of Egypt in half, in front of his own staff. And it is going to show you what real repentance looks like when it finally walks into the room. Because I promise you, it does not look like an apology. A mother in a church basement support group once said, "The truest thing I have ever heard about repentance." And she said it, holding a styrofoam cup of coffee she never drank. Her son was 6 years into addiction at the time. 6 years of missing cash and pawned tools and apologies. And she wanted the room to understand about the apologies. They were beautiful. Her boy could apologize like a poet. Tears, scripture, promises, whole letters sometimes. And she believed every one of them for the first 3 years, and none of them after that. Because the apologies changed nothing but the calendar. Then one afternoon, something small happened. A neighbor's window got broken, and everybody assumed it was the son. And for once, it genuinely was not him. It was his younger sister backing the car out badly. And she froze and said nothing. And the boy stood in the driveway, took the blame he had coming from 6 years of history, and paid for that window out of the first honest paycheck he had earned in years. Never told anyone the truth. His mother only learned it from the sister. Months later, crying, and the mother said, "That was the day I believed him." Not any apology. That day, because an apology is a sentence, she said, and repentance is a direction. And you do not hear the difference. You watch it walk. Hold that in your hands. Because, in Genesis 44, a man named Judah is about to walk. The brothers are heading home. The second trip to Egypt has gone better than they dared hope. Simeon released. Benjamin safe at their side. Sacks full. And the strange, harsh governor even hosted them at his own table and seated them, to their silent astonishment, in exact birth order, oldest to youngest, and gave Benjamin 5 times the portions. Watching, always watching. Now it is morning, and the city is behind them, and the nightmare is finally over. Then hoof beats. The governor's steward overtakes them with an accusation that stops their blood. "My master's silver cup is missing. Why have you repaid good with evil?" They are so certain of their innocence that they write the sentence themselves. "Whichever of your servants is found with it, let him die, and the rest of us will be my lord's slaves." The steward softens the terms. And here the softening, because the whole test lives inside it. Only the man who has the cup becomes a slave. The rest of you go free. The rest of you go free. Do you see the machine Joseph has built? Sack by sack, the steward searches, oldest to youngest, dragging the suspense down the whole line of them. And in the last sack, Benjamin's sack, the silver flashes. Now freeze the scene and look at it, because this is Dothan, rebuilt to the last detail. A son of Rachel, the father's new favorite, stands condemned by evidence, and 10 older brothers hold a clean exit in their hands. Walk away. That is all they have to do. Not even a crime this time. Just walk away. Blameless, with grain in their sacks and their own freedom guaranteed by the governor's own words. 22 years ago, these same men stood over a favored boy in trouble and sat down to eat. Every pressure of that old afternoon has been reassembled around them. And the door out is standing wide open. And it is even legal this time. And the text says, they tore their clothes. There it is again. The garments. All through this story, other people have torn clothing off of Joseph to tell lies about him. Now, at the sight of Rachel's son in chains, 10 men tear their own clothes in grief. The ancient gesture of mourning. And it is the truest thing fabric has done in this entire book. And then every last one of them loads his donkey and turns around and rides back into the city, back into the jaws of the trap, when the trap had already told them they were free to go. They walked, before a word gets spoken. They walked, inside. They fall to the ground before Joseph. And Judah steps forward, and asks leave to speak, and delivers what scholars will tell you is the longest speech in the book of Genesis. And what I will tell you is the sound of a human soul turning around in public. Go read it tonight. Genesis 44. And watch what is missing from it. There is no self-defense in that speech. Not a line of it. Judah does not argue the evidence, does not protest the setup, does not bargain for better terms. He simply tells the truth about his family to a stranger with absolute power. And the truth centers on an old man's heart. We have a father, an old man, and a child of his old age, and his brother is dead, and his father loves him. 10 times. Count them. 10 times in one speech, Judah says the word father. He describes what no one described at Dothan, what the loss of one boy already did to that old man, how his life is bound up in the life of this last one, how the grey head will go down to the grave in sorrow if the boy does not come home. 22 years ago, Judah watched his father collapse over a bloody coat and kept the secret through every day of the grief that followed. Now listen to him. He has spent 2 decades learning the exact weight of what he did, and he can describe it, ounce by ounce, to a throne. And then the sentence, the one this whole story has been waiting on since the pit. Now, therefore, please, let your servant remain instead of the boy as a slave to my lord, and let the boy go up with his brothers. Instead of the boy, take me, chain me, let the favorite go home to his father, and I will pay for it with the rest of my life. Friend, do the mathematics of that sentence. Judah is the man who invented the sale. Judah is the one who looked down into a pit at a brother and saw a profit margin. What gain is it if we kill him? Come, let us sell him. And the boy standing in chains right now is everything that once made Judah's blood boil. The favorite, the beloved of Rachel. The son their father openly loves the most. Every jealousy of Dothan has a fresh target, and every incentive of Dothan is offering itself again. And Judah walks back to the exact spot where his soul once broke, faces the exact same choice, and chooses the opposite, at the price of his own future. And here is the detail that certifies all of it. He does not know who he is talking to. There is no angle here, no performance for a brother's mercy, no calculation that the governor might be moved by family feeling. As far as Judah knows, he is trading his life away to a foreign official with cold eyes, permanently, for a boy his father loves more than him. Nobody is grading this. That is exactly why it counts. Repentance that performs for an audience is still negotiating. Repentance that pays full price in an empty theater has finally, actually, turned around. An apology is a sentence. Repentance is a direction. And Joseph, on the throne, 3 feet away, watching the direction walk, comes apart. Then Joseph could not restrain himself before all those who stood by him, and he cried out, "Make everyone go out from me. Clear the room, every guard, every steward, every interpreter, out, because what is about to happen is not government business." And when the room is empty of Egypt, the text records this, "And he wept aloud, and the Egyptians and the house of Pharaoh heard it." Stop here with me. Stand right here, because this is the moment I told you was coming. All the way back at the pit, 22 years ago, a 17-year-old cried out from the bottom of a cistern while his brothers chewed their bread, and the Bible turned the sound off. Genesis 37 recorded the coat and the silver and refused to record the scream. You had to wait 22 years to even learn there was a scream. And you learned it from the mouths of the guilty. And now, look at what Scripture does. The boy from the pit is a man of about 40, the second most powerful human being on the face of the earth. and he is weeping so loudly that it passes through the stone walls of a palace. And this time the Bible writes the sound down. The Egyptians heard it. Pharaoh's household heard it. The cry that was buried in chapter 37 comes up out of the ground in chapter 45. And this time there is no turning the sound off. And half of Egypt is the witness. Nothing stays buried in this story. Friend, I told you that once already. Not even sound. And what was in that weeping? Do not rush to call it joy. Because it was not only joy. 22 years were in it. A stolen youth that no reunion returns. A father who aged 2 decades inside a lie. Every family table Joseph was not seated at. Every harvest festival. Every funeral and wedding and ordinary Tuesday of a family that went on without him because they told themselves he was dead. The horror, still fresh. Of standing in disguise while your own brothers describe you in the past tense. And threaded through all of that grief, unbearable precisely because it arrived, tangled in the grief, this one impossible relief. People can change. The thing he had been testing for, the thing he had scarcely allowed himself to hope, was standing in front of him wearing Judah's face. And grief and hope had to leave his body through the same door at the same time. And that, friend, that sound is what the Egyptians heard through the walls. Then 2 words in Hebrew, the shortest earthquake in Genesis. Ani Yosef. I am Joseph. Does my father still live? And his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed in his presence. Of course, they could not answer. The dead man is standing up. The boy in the pit is wearing Pharaoh's gold. And he has been watching them, testing them, feeding them, for 2 years. And every nightmare they have carried for 2 decades is breathing in front of them, holding absolute power. The text says they were terrified, and terror was the rational response. And watch the first thing Joseph does with their terror. Come near to me, he says. Come near. The man they threw far away closes the distance first, and they came near. And he said it again, with the wound included. This time, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. He names it. He does not sand it down, does not say whom circumstances carried to Egypt. He says, whom you sold. Because real reconciliation never launders the crime. And then, with the crime named and standing in the room, he wraps his arms around Benjamin and weeps. And then he kisses all his brothers. All of them. Judah, who priced him, and Simeon, who likely roughed him, and every man who chewed bread over his screaming, and weeps over each one. And after that, the text says, his brothers talked with him. The first ordinary conversation in 22 years. The passing of bread. The good morning. The simple courtesy that died in Canaan when the coat showed up. Alive again in an Egyptian hall. He will even say to them, in that room, a first draft of the sentence that will take him 17 more years to finish. Do not be grieved or angry with yourselves that you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. Hold that thought loosely for now. It is real, and it is not finished. And the final weight of it belongs to a later chapter. Because there is one more room this family has to walk through before that sentence can carry everything it was built to carry. But first I owe somebody in this audience an honest word. And I have been carrying it for 9 chapters. So let me set it down carefully. Some of you have been waiting 30 years for the speech Judah just gave. You have rehearsed the reunion the way the mechanic rehearsed his reckoning. Except yours is not a reckoning. Yours is just a door opening and somebody finally saying the true thing. Instead of the boy, take me. I saw what it did to you. I have carried it every day. And I will not stand here and promise you that speech is coming. Some Judas never turn the donkey around. Some people who hurt you will go to their graves still telling the old story at holiday tables, still innocent in their own courtroom. And if your healing is scheduled to begin only when their confession arrives, then they are still holding the keys to your cell, 22 years later, and they do not even know it. So hear the difference one more time, because your freedom lives inside it. What made reconciliation possible in that Egyptian hall was 4 things standing in the same room at the same time. Truth, named out loud, whom you sold into Egypt. Repentance, walked and not just spoken. Change, tested and proven at full price. And mercy, waiting on the throne with its arms already open. When all 4 of those show up, friend, you get Genesis 45. And thank God it happens. It happens in real families. I have watched it happen. But when one of them refuses to enter the room, God does not ask you to play its part. You cannot perform their repentance for them. You cannot manufacture their truth. What you hold, what nobody can withhold from you, is your own mercy. And mercy can unlock your heart even when the reunion never comes. Forgiveness is the door you can open alone. Reconciliation takes everyone walking through it. So the wagons roll north with a message that stops an old man's heart and then restarts it. Joseph is still alive, and he is governor over all the land of Egypt. And Jacob comes down with everything he has, 70 souls. And there is a reunion on the road to Goshen, where a father falls on the neck of a son he buried 22 years ago and weeps a good long while. And honestly, I could end the story there. Most tellings do. 17 years of peace follow. The family settles in Goshen. The famine passes. The grandchildren multiply. Jacob blesses his sons from his deathbed, with his hand resting on the heads of Joseph's boys. But I promised you 10 turning points, and this was only 9, because there is a question that 17 years of shared dinners never answered in that family. A question living quietly under the peace, like a crack under new paint. And the day they bury Jacob, the question comes up out of the ground. Did Joseph forgive them, or was he only waiting for their father to die? 2 sisters are sitting in their mother's kitchen the night after her funeral. Surrounded by casserole dishes they will never return. And the younger one asks the question she has been carrying for 11 years. 11 years ago she did something to her sister. It does not matter tonight what it was. It was bad. It was deliberate. It cost her sister things that did not come back. And it was forgiven. Out loud. Years ago, in this same kitchen, with their mother sitting between them like a treaty table. And life resumed. Holidays resumed. The sisters have laughed together since, vacationed together, stood side by side at this very funeral. 11 years of evidence. And tonight, with the treaty table empty, the younger sister turns her coffee cup in slow circles and asks, in a voice she has to push the words through, "Now that Mom is gone, are we still okay?" Because some part of her never believed it. 11 years. And some part of her has been waiting for the mercy to expire, quietly convinced that her sister's kindness was for their mother's sake. A peace held together by a third heartbeat. And now the heartbeat has stopped. That is what a real wound does. Friend, and this is the part nobody preaches. It does not only teach the wounded to fear, it teaches the guilty that mercy cannot possibly be real, because the guilty know their own hearts, and they know what they would do with the power their victim now holds. Genesis, chapter 50. Jacob dies, full of years, with all 12 sons around him. They carry him back to Canaan in a funeral procession, so vast the Canaanites name a landmark after the mourning, and they bury him with Abraham and Isaac. And they return to Egypt, and the story could close right here in peace. Instead, verse 15, when Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, "Perhaps Joseph will hate us, and may actually repay us for all the evil which we did to him." 17 years. 17 years of eating his grain, living on land he secured for them, watching their children grow up under his protection. And the old fear is alive under all of it, like a coal under ash. Perhaps it was all for father. Perhaps the account was never closed, only postponed. They have lived 17 years the way the younger sister lived 11. Inside, a mercy they never quite trusted, waiting for the third heartbeat to stop. So they do the thing that tells you everything about where they still live. They send messengers to Joseph with a story. Before your father died, he commanded, saying, "Thus you shall say to Joseph, I beg you, please forgive the trespass of your brothers and their sin." Scholars have wondered for centuries whether Jacob ever said any such thing, and the text gives you every reason to doubt it. Because if Jacob knew, why route the plea through messengers instead of speaking it himself in 17 years of opportunities? No, friend, this has the fingerprints of the old machinery all over it. These are the men whose first move, 22 years ago, was a coat dipped in goat's blood, a fabricated message designed to manage their father's heart. Now, at the other end of the story, their last move is a fabricated message designed to manage their brothers. They began with a lie about a death. They are ending with a lie about a deathbed. Fear has learned nothing new in 40 years. It is still doing the only trick it knows. And when Joseph received the message, the text says, he wept. The seventh weeping, the last one, Scripture counts. And I want you to understand why this one. Because he is not weeping over the old wound. The old wound has been healed for 17 years. He is weeping over what the wound did to them. After everything, after the embrace and the kisses and the 17 thanksgivings in Goshen, they still cannot believe they are forgiven. They still think his mercy was a strategy. They still flinch when he stands up too fast. He has spent 17 years loving men who were secretly bracing for the blow. And there is a particular grief in that. The grief of grace refused by the very hands it is feeding. And if you have ever forgiven someone who kept treating you like an executioner with a delayed schedule, you know the exact temperature of Joseph's tears. Then the brothers come in person and fall down before his face and say, "Behold, we are your servants." The dream one final time, faces to the ground, and they are offering him the very thing they once sold him into. "Make us slaves. Just let us live." And Joseph answers with 2 sentences that took his whole life to build. And the first one is a question. Do not be afraid. For am I in the place of God? Am I in the place of God? Hold that question up to the light, because there are 2 mercies folded inside it. The first is for them. Vengeance is a chair I am not allowed to sit in. Your account is not mine to settle. but the second mercy is for himself, and it is the one that set him free years before this conversation. Somewhere in the long road from the pit, Joseph resigned from a job he was never given. The job of being the judge of his own story, the accountant of every wrong, the enforcer of the balance. Am I in the place of God? No, and thank God no. Because the man who appoints himself to that chair chains himself to his offenders forever, keeping their books, serving their sentence alongside them. Joseph handed the gavel back. That is why his hands were free. And then, the sentence, the one this entire journey has been climbing toward. Genesis 50, verse 20. You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring it about as it is this day, to save many people alive. Now, everything I have for you tonight lives inside one Hebrew word in that sentence. So, lean in. The word translated meant is chashav. It means to weave, to calculate, to design, to plan with intent. It is a craftsman's word, a word for something built on purpose. And Joseph uses it twice in one breath. Atem chashaftem. You designed. Elohim chashavach. God designed. The same verb, the same event, two architects. Your design for that afternoon at Dothan was destruction. Over your design, without excusing it, without needing it, without one drop of participation in its evil, ran a larger design. And its blueprint said life. Life for Egypt. Life for the nations. Life for the very family that drew the first plan. Two intentions rode the same event. Friend, theirs was real. It was just never ultimate. And now, let me be a careful workman with this verse, because it may be the most misquoted sentence in the Old Testament. And when it is misquoted, it wounds people in the name of comfort. Listen to what Genesis 50:20 does not say. It does not say the brothers meant well. Deep down, they did not. The verse opens by convicting them. You meant evil. No softening, no reframe. It does not say the evil was secretly good, or that time revealed it was no big deal. 22 years, and an old man's broken heart say otherwise. It does not say Joseph owed them gratitude for the outcome. You will search that hall in vain for a thank you. And it does not say God authored the crime. God authored the rescue that outran the crime. What the verse says is exactly this, and only this. Their intention was real, and God's intention was bigger. And when the two designs met, the bigger one held. God did not call their evil good. He outlived its intention. Now watch what Joseph never does, because here, right here, is the deepest redemption in this whole story. Deeper than the ring and the linen and the second chariot. For 17 years, and for 54 more after this conversation, Joseph holds absolute power over the men who dug the pit. Their food comes through his administration. Their land is his gift. Their children's futures sit under his signature. 10 men who once decided his life was worth 20 pieces of silver live out their entire lives inside his jurisdiction. And not once, not one time in 7 decades, does he reach for the pit as leverage? No cold reminders at family dinners. No debts called in. The verse, after his great sentence, says he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. The wounded man consoling his wounders. And then he simply keeps his word. I will provide for you and your little ones. Year after year. until the provision outlives him. Because here is the final counterfeit of this journey, and it may be running your life tonight. It is closure wearing the costume of peace. It says, I will be at peace when they finally admit it, when they apologize, when they understand what they did, and it feels like a reasonable price, until you notice who is holding the invoice. Look at the text one last time. The brothers never fully got there. 17 years of grace, and they were still sending fabricated messages. Still bracing, still half strangers to the mercy that fed them. And Joseph was at peace anyway. His peace was never parked in their mouths. Friend, if it had been, he would have died waiting on it. Closure is a gift when it comes. When it becomes a condition, it is a hostage taker, and the ransom never stops climbing. Joseph's greatest victory was never that his brothers bowed. Sheaves bow, empires bow. That was just the dream coming true. His greatest victory was that when he finally held every ounce of power required to become exactly what they had been, he refused. The cruelty stopped at his desk. The pattern that ran through Isaac's favoritism and Jacob's favoritism and 10 brothers' hatred came down the generations like a river, reached Joseph, and found the one man who would not pass it on. 22 years earlier, God brought Joseph up out of the pit. It took the rest of the story to see the greater rescue underneath it. God got the pit out of Joseph. And now, before this road ends, stand still one last time, because you need to see where this arithmetic goes after Genesis. And I promise you, it goes somewhere. 2,000 years after Joseph. 50 days after the darkest Friday in the history of the world. A fisherman stood up in Jerusalem in front of thousands of people and preached the sermon that started the church. And buried in it is one sentence with Genesis 50:20 running in its veins. This Jesus, Peter says, delivered up by the determined purpose and foreknowledge of God, you have taken by lawless hands, have crucified, and put to death. Hear it, 2 intentions. 1 event, you took him, lawless hands, real guilt, real evil. The verse convicts exactly the way Joseph's did, and over it, through it, never excusing one splinter of it. The determined purpose of God, designing salvation on the very lumber that hatred cut. And look at the shape of the story, because you have seen this man before, betrayed by his own brothers, sold for pieces of silver, stripped of his garment, which soldiers gambled over while he suffered, counted as dead, falsely accused, and silent before the accusers, numbered with prisoners, remembered by one and forgotten by the crowd. And when he came up out of the pit that could not hold him, holding all power in heaven and on earth, what did he do with it? He went looking for the men who had abandoned him in his darkest hour, and he found them in a boat, and he built a fire on the shore, and he fed them breakfast. Bread, friend, bread again, from the hands of the betrayed one, given to the ones who ran. Joseph was the sketch, Golgotha was the masterpiece. And if you belong to Jesus tonight, then you are not just listening to the story of a redeemed betrayal. You are alive because of one. The worst thing human beings ever did became the doorway to the best thing God ever gave. Not because the evil was good, but because the evil was never sovereign. It never has been. Not on that hill. Not at Dothan. And not, hear me now, not in your story either. The wound was real. The evil was real, the loss was real, but the ending was never theirs. Say it with the whole book behind it this time. It was never theirs. Not the brothers, not the liars, not the forgetful man's, not even death's. There is one stretch of road left now, and it is the shortest one of the night, and it does not belong to Joseph, or Judah, or Jacob, or anyone buried in Egypt or Canaan. It is tomorrow morning, yours, the coffee maker, the kitchen window, the phone lying face down where you left it. And one last question is going to be waiting for you there beside the cup. The question this whole journey was built to ask. It is tomorrow morning now, your tomorrow morning. The coffee maker is doing its slow work in the corner, and the window over the sink is showing you the same street it showed you yesterday. And let me be straight with you one final time. The way this road has tried to be straight with you the whole way down. Nothing we walked through tonight changed one fact on the ground of your life. The person who hurt you woke up this morning the same person they were. The apology that has not come still has not come. The money is still gone. The house is still sold. The years are still spent. And the text message is still sitting in your phone. 4 years old. Memorized. Anyone who tells you a video can move those stones is selling you something. And you have been sold to enough. But the person standing at this counter does not have to be the person who was reading that message at 1:17 in the morning. That was true for a boy at the bottom of a cistern in Dothan. And it is true beside your coffee maker today. So, before you pick up the cup and walk into the day, let me put 3 things in your hands. They are the whole cargo of this journey, and they are small enough to carry. Here is the first one. God redeems without erasing. Remember the names of Joseph's sons. Manasseh. God has made me forget my toil. Ephraim. God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. And remember what we saw hiding inside those beautiful names. A man does not name his child after a thing he actually forgot. Naming is remembering. Joseph spoke the words forget and affliction out loud across his own dinner table every evening for the rest of his life. And he spoke them over 2 thriving boys, in a full house, at a table with food on it. That is what healing actually looks like. Friend, and nobody tells you this, healing is not amnesia. The memory stays. The pit stays on the map. What changes? Slowly, at the speed of years and grace, is the memory's job description. It used to drive, now it rides. It used to write your future, now it is just a chapter in your past. And the pen has been taken back from it. If you can still remember every detail of what they did, that is not proof you have failed to heal. Joseph could have drawn you that cistern from memory at 90 years old. The question was never whether you remember. The question is, who is driving? Here is the second one. God grows life in soil you never chose. Look one more time at what Joseph never got back. He never got to be 17 in Canaan again. Never got the ordinary years. The family table through his 20s. The chance to bury his mother's memory slowly among people who shared it. The old life was not restored to him. Friend, and I refuse to lie to you at the last mile of this road. Redemption did not hand Joseph back the life the betrayal interrupted. Redemption built him a life, a real one, a full one. In the exact country his catastrophe dumped him in. Fruitful in the land of my affliction, both words true at once. Fruitful and affliction, growing in the same field. Some of you are still commuting to the old life, still driving the long way past the factory with somebody else's name on it, still keeping a note on the refrigerator that says this is not my real life. Hear Egypt's testimony this morning. The soil you would never have chosen is still soil. Rain still lands on it. And the God who would not stay behind in Canaan is already out in that field ahead of you. Sleeves rolled, waiting to see if you will plant. And here is the third one, the one to grip hardest. They do not own who you become next. Tally up what they did change. Honestly, all of it. They may have changed your address. They changed Joseph's by 250 miles. They may have changed who stayed in your life and who vanished from it. They may have changed your church, your name in a town, the shape of your holidays, the number of chairs at your table. That power, the power to rearrange your circumstances. They had it, and they used it, and pretending otherwise would insult your scars. But there was one room their power never entered. 10 men took a coat. A woman took a garment. A prison took his freedom. A cupbearer took 2 years. And not one of them, not all of them combined, ever laid a finger on who Joseph was inside the fabric. That vote was never on their ballot. It is not on your betrayer's ballot either. They wrote a chapter of your story. Friend, I will not minimize the chapter, but the author position was never open, and it is not open now. So now the only question left is the one this whole night was built to ask you. Which one are you this morning? Some of you are in the pit, and it is recent, and the dirt is still falling. The shock is still in your body. You are still rereading the message, still checking the signature against the light, hoping, I am not going to hand you a bow to tie on it. I am going to hand you one sentence to say in the dark. Even if you cannot believe it yet, especially if you cannot believe it yet. The wound is real. The ending is not theirs. Say it the way a drowning man grabs a rope he cannot see. Rope does not require your confidence to hold. Some of you are in year 2 of being forgotten. The cupbearer got out and the phone went quiet. And you have done the math on 214 contacts, and the count is eating you. Yours is this. Forgotten by the palace is not forgotten by heaven. And the 2 record books have never once matched. So keep the small faith. Run your cell block well. Keep noticing faces. Keep asking sad people why they are sad. Do today with excellence, one more time. The calendar was never in that man's pocket. Some of you are Jacob, holding the coat. You have been grieving a verdict somebody handed you. A closed case. A story about a person that ended in blood on fabric. And you built years of sorrow on testimony. Nobody cross-examined. I would never promise you a wagon train from Egypt. I will tell you what this book showed you. Some funerals are premature, and some of what you buried, God has merely relocated, and you may be mourning a story he has not finished telling. Some of you made it to the throne, and you know exactly who you are. The career recovered. The second marriage is good. Everybody says how well you came through it, and the 17-year-old is still in the control room. You named your whole life Manasseh, and the forgetting never quite took. Friend, you have climbed as high as altitude goes. Ask God this morning for the deeper rescue, the one under the promotion. He already brought you out of the pit. Let him start bringing the pit out of you. And some of you, hear me, some of you are Judah. Nobody preaches to you. So I will. You are not the one in the pit this morning. You dug one. years ago, and you have carried the shovel every day since, into every family dinner where the subject gets walked around, into every prayer that stops halfway up. You have watched this whole journey from the far side of the wound. So look at whose speech broke the story open. The Bible put your road in here on purpose. Judah walked back to the exact spot where his soul had failed, faced the same choice, and paid full price going the other direction. And heaven wrote the messianic line through Judah's family, not Joseph's. Read that again. The bloodline of Jesus runs through the repentant guilty. There is a door in this story marked for the ones who did the hurting, and it opens from your side, with truth, at your own expense. It is not too late to become a different man in the room. And finally, some of you will never get the room at all. No, Judah is coming to your throne room. The person who hurt you is unreachable, or unrepentant, or gone from this earth entirely. And every telling of this story has quietly tortured you with a reunion you cannot have. So take this last sentence and keep it. Reconciliation needed all of them to walk through the door. Forgiveness only ever needed you. You can hand the gavel back this morning, alone, in a kitchen, with no witnesses and no apology on file, and walk out of the courtroom you have been running for years. Am I in the place of God? You never were. You can resign today. The chair was never yours to fill. And thank God, because the one who fills it saw everything, heard everything, even the cry from the bottom of the pit that took 22 years to surface. And he has never once lost a file. Let me pray a short one over you, and I will keep it plain, because you have had enough performances for one lifetime. Father, here is my friend, standing at the counter with the whole morning, waiting. Call their mind home from the life that never happened, back into the one life you are actually writing. Let them know, down under all the arguments, that you saw the pit. You heard what the page left silent, and you have been keeping records nobody else kept. Give them the nerve to plant something in soil they never chose. If they are Judah this morning, give them the long walk back and the true sentence. And whether the reunion comes in this life or never comes at all, take the gavel out of their tired hand and post your peace around their heart, and do not let it fall. Amen. Now, one last thing, and then the road is yours. Pick up the phone. The message is still in there, and you do not have to delete it this morning. Joseph never deleted Dothan. He named his sons in its shadow and fed his brothers from its lesson. And the memory sat at his table like an old scar that had finally stopped aching. But before you set the phone back down, run your thumb over the oldest arithmetic in the book. The equation written over a dry cistern in Dothan and sealed forever on a hill outside Jerusalem. They designed it. God designed over it. Two intentions rode the same event, and theirs was real. And it was never, not for 1 hour of one day in 3,000 years. The one that held, the wound was real, the evil was real, the loss was real, but the ending was never theirs. It never was. He has always been holding the pen.